Now, when we talk about intratumoral immunotherapy, people think, okay, I'm thinking of the drugs, like you mentioned PD-1, CTLA-4, et cetera. But honestly, we're injecting other things in that are modulating the immune system.
Yeah.
That's not just those drugs.
Yeah, because you get that a lot where patients or the doctor, and I see this all the time. The doctors will the patient's like, oh, I'm going to go get this intratumoral immunotherapy. And I say, well, you don't have PD-1, you don't have PD-L1 in your tumor.
Good point.
You don't have mismatch repair, so it's not going to work. Well, that doesn't matter. I mean, well, first thing, those aren't even good markers, so I wouldn't even use that for PD-1. I mean, you can say that, but we're doing way more. I mean, we're using multi combinations. We're hitting multiple checkpoints. I mean, LAG3, B7H3. I mean, got even others that we can do. And then, of course, we're doing like co-stimulatory molecules. I mean, you've got 4-1BB, OX40, and then you got this sort of a multi, CD40. Gosh, I mean, it does so much. This is a completely different deal. So none of that even applies. So they're looking at it and saying, well, yeah, that you don't have that, but it's not going to work because this is not the situation. This is a completely different deal. This is a much more effective immunotherapy. And so none of those factors, mismatch repair deficiency, all that type of stuff that they want to, cite as being those are the only patients that respond to immunotherapy is not true.
So again, another mouse model, and you're familiar with the mice because you used to.
Oh yeah,
you tell some great stories about your pre-medical school testing
Yeah,
of mice, or even in medical school and beyond.
Yeah, I had some, even had in my laboratory, in my own house.
But it was really interesting because they were looking at cryoablation, intratumoral immunotherapy with CpG ODN 16668, which is a TLR9 agonist.
Yeah.
And what they found is that cryoablation alone provided some protection against the tumor re-challenge after ablation. But what they were doing here is they were trying to create a model that looked at metastasis.
Mm-hmm.
And so they found that when they surgically resected the primary tumor which they treated, the later implants that they implanted into the mice, they didn't respond as well.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people go, wait a second, you mean if you leave the tumor there that was treated, and then you created a mouse model that you implanted a new metastatic site, so thinking distant metastasis, a model, if you left the tumor in place, those distant metastatic sites responded better to the immune activation versus if you surgically removed it, there was a reduced immune response.
Sure.
So again, it comes down to immune system.
Yeah. So you want to maximize and do everything, and surgically removing an area. I mean, because this came up a lot, particularly before breast cancer patients, early stage breast cancer, and we would just cryoablation of their tumor, and then some of the patients would have the option that they could do lumpectomy after.
Right.
And I say, well, you could, and also I tell them, if you do, you need to wait. You need that time period to allow the immune response to happen, because usually we're trying to do this in an immune stimulating way. And so, because if you did that and then you immediately surgically cut it out, you actually remove all of that immune stimulation that's going on there, and it doesn't get a chance to spread in the body, and then their risk of getting future metastasis is not reduced.
And what they found is that when they looked at the metastatic model, of course, again, what they did is they had the primary tumor, they treated, and then they came in and they implanted, again, secondary metastatic sites. In those that they left the tumors in place, there was a 40% regression of those implanted metastatic models. But those that did not, so they removed the tumor, no response. So it's complete. So now clearly surgery to reduce tumor burden can be advantageous sometimes. So we don't want to say there's not a situation where it can't be.
There may be certain situations. I mean, again, it's like we're not demonizing completely that chemo, surgery, radiation, it has zero use. It has use,
just a little bit,
but has a little bit, right? It's limited, right? It's being way overused. I mean, that's unfortunate that that's why they're not seeing this other stuff. They're so fixated on these things that are not working as well, and they're not seeing these other options. But yeah, but in the future, I think obviously we want to have it where patients don't have to have surgery, hopefully, and hopefully you catch the patients early enough where it's not a situation that they need surgery. If you do that, you can get under control. It's just when things are more advanced, well then you get patient with a colon cancer and they're obstructed. Okay, well they got to have surgery. There's no option there. I mean, you're not gonna be able to fix that and make the person better.
But I tell people all the time: is you walk outside, you fall, break a hip, you got to surgically repair that.
There's it's always appropriate in certain situations.
So what about another question is the timing, and I get surprised because our patients are quite intelligent.
Yeah.
And I've had some questions from patients about, well, is it better if we do them together, or if we get IV systemic immunotherapy later? Or I've even seen it called the in one go, which is kind of what we do. So what do you think, Jason? Because I think you've been doing this longer than anybody else in the world. What's the best strategy to bring the immunotherapies in combination together for the activation of the immune system intratumorally?
And one of the things, of course, is looked at. Martin Denbrock, he did a bunch of studies looking at like spatially, like doing ablation and immunotherapy. Like you do ablation and did the immunotherapy. Well, did immunotherapy first alone, and then ablation, and then ablation and with immunotherapy, and ablation and immunotherapy after, even still injecting in the tumor. So we understand, 1 day, 3 days. I mean, but it was always at the same time was superior from what we saw. So and it makes more sense. I mean, you're go ahead and you're ablating. I mean, you'd like to go ahead and have that immunotherapy on board right at that moment.
So don't want to waste time. Don't want to waste time.
Yeah.
And then we've talked about this too, the chronicity, the circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this elsewhere, so I encourage you to check out those podcasts where we talk about the circadian rhythm of the immune system and immunotherapy, the timing of it. Because again, if you give systemic chemotherapy in the afternoon, those patients have lower overall survival.
Yeah.
But here we're talking about the timing as it relates to a circadian rhythm. Touch on that just really quick.
Yeah, so we know that the immune system sort of works in a cycle, and so it will start potentially attacking cancer in a phase, and then it will then switch more to like either not attacking or more regulatory, where it could be protecting cancer. So it's like the attacking cancer part works, and we know that based on the studies that were done that the cycle runs about 8 days, and it's about 4 days of attacking and then 4 days of regulatory. And it goes back and forth like that. And so when you give immunotherapies, if you give it the wrong time, you give it where the more regulatory, you may boost those cells, right? And those are protecting cancer. And that's going to not work as well.
So what you're saying is immune stimulation is not always good.
Right. I mean, particularly depending on the agents and what you're doing. I mean, there can be a certain the time. And particularly, I mean, obviously we know some of the cytokines. Interleukin 2 being the great example on that you give it the wrong time, and it goes. That's why.
Because if you're increasing myeloid-derived suppressing cells, T-regulating cells, that's immunostimulating, but it's immunosuppressing.
Yeah. That's when we do immunotherapy mix where we're not quite affecting this other thing, so we're able to get around a little bit on the timing.
Mm-hmm.
Also, our drugs sort of linger around, so they can kind of still be there, as the cycle changes and start working as you need it. They're a little bit different, but yeah, it's definitely more like some of the cytokine stuff. You have to be cautious with that, cautious on the timing. We know that you can try to measure this with a high sensitivity C-reactive protein was kind of the way to do it. But yeah, unfortunately, standard practice doesn't do any of those things. But those would be all nice things to do.
And then another question is, you mean you're injecting more than one thing as an immunotherapy?
A lot of things. So we do. We throw a lot of stuff at it, and so there's various things. I mean, and there's various like phasing of stuff. I mean, so one, you attack a cancer, and you need to recruit immune cells to it. So let's say it's a brand new cancer. I mean, like a cancer that you haven't hit with immunotherapy, and you're going to assume, I mean, you kind of know, but you're going to assume that the immune cells are probably not there or not enough, and so you need to use heavier the drugs that kind of recruit those. The drugs that are saying, hey, here's a problem, you need to come here, and so there's a certain class of drugs that that do that affect a little more of the innate immune response. Obviously, toll-like receptor agonists are certainly a big part of that.
Yeah.
And then there's the sort of the transition phase. Well, now you got the cells there, but they could come in and say, well, okay, no, there's nothing to see here. Let's go away. You need to give them that stimulus and saying, yeah, you're here. You need to like attack this. And so that's kind of how we do this sort of like in the phases. So I adjust the immunotherapies on that and start changing and using more of the agents that will then, say, okay, yeah, keep attacking. And then you've got the sort of other phase of like, well, now the immune system is attacking, but the cancer then can start shutting it off by the checkpoints. And so then as you get further in the therapy, you're going to start heavy weighting the checkpoint therapies. I mean, so, you can start backing down on some of the other agents. And then, now there's sometimes, I mean, you may want to use all of them. You may want to just adjust the levels, right? I mean, that's kind of what we do. And I mean, that's
we don't just follow protocol.
Yeah, I know, and that's what makes it sort of complicated, and that's why it's really hard for people to duplicate this. I mean, we know in our studies and trying to get this out to other doctors, we're just trying to make it in a simple format and make it where, okay, this is what you do, and you just do this all the time, and that works decent for most people. It's not the best, but it's good. As well, I developed this cancer care AI. I don't know if you've seen that. Yeah. So the concept behind that was that the cancer care AI, it'd have all the data in there, the DNA and RNA and all the information, and it would tell you what immunotherapies you should be using. So, and it would, and in the future we'll have this where that will be connected to a system that's robotic.
Yeah.
The robot will have the needles and stuff will be loaded like an inkjet printer, and it'll have all the different drugs, and then
it'll know exactly where to go.
It'll know where to go, and then the AI will know the drug combination, and it will do it all like the different mix. And so that's kind of the future of what we see. I mean, we haven't made it, but we're designing on paper.
So basically, what you're saying is where we are right now in the Williams Cancer, you've brought the future to today.
Yeah.
But you're already working on the future of the future and the future of that.
Yeah. We're working on stuff that is going to be, like it's going to look like from another planet. I mean, it's not, with robots doing the procedures, because again, the issue is that we can do it. Lots of doctors can do it, but there's limitations, and also want to make it easy where like there's that just access for more people. And so if we can do it robotically, then that's going to make it easier where the doctor can just be there monitoring and let the robot do it. And then of course the software, the AI, which will interlink with the robot, knows the drug combinations, because it is too complex for most doctors to know and understand. And so that they just don't have to think. They just do it.
I think you said it correct. They just don't have to think.
Yeah.
So, and basically, what you're kind of doing, I had this picture of a Picasso or Rembrandt, and that's what we're doing. And then other doctors or other practitioners out there, they're just doing stick figures. It's the protocol versus the artistry of it all applied appropriately.
I know it's important, but that's why we're trying to democratize this to get it to everybody. We want everybody to benefit. I mean, we're not wanting to be the only place that does this. I mean, that's why we do this. We hope that doctors are listening to us talking right now and are doing this, and we want them to do it. It's not a competition. It's to save lives. I mean,
I don't think anybody's short on patients with cancer, unfortunately.
No, and so in my opinion, what happens is, I mean, I see there's people suffering.
Yeah.
I mean, and it really bothers me to see that, like, people are being maimed and they're dying, and we could fix it. I mean, I know how to fix it if people will listen to me, right? If they'll do what we say, that we could fix this, and we just got to get them to listen.
Yeah. And what's really interesting to me is when you do the intratumoral ablation, intratumoral immunotherapy, it's actually, you talked about innate immunity, and then there's the adaptive immunity.
Yeah.
And then there's this Th1, Th2.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting when you look at the combination of some of those immune checkpoints plus intratumoral ablation, you trigger a innate, but also then a adaptive immunity. But it also shifts the Th2 to Th1.
Yeah, so it's always the immune system always has a counterbalance of like so you're gonna have the potential attacking, and then you got the regulatory protecting.
Mm-hmm.
So and then these cells, they all look alike. That's why like you don't know, is that attacking cancer, is that protecting cancer? Their receptors all look basically the same. It's just the jobs that they do is different,
right?
And so that's why it's challenging with some of the drugs, because you may be affecting the regulatory cells and you're helping them, when you wanted to be helping the cancer attacking. And so when you can convert the cells to where they're not wanting to protect the cancer, and they're wanting to be on the side, it's like you got, you're fighting a war, and you got some of the other troops on the other side to join you.
That's right.
That's what happened. And as you do that, that's a really good thing, because your original option is you got to kill them, but if they join you, now you don't have to kill them. Now they help you,
That's
and
right.
now they work with you, and then the stuff that you give is more beneficial, because now you give the weapons. Before you give the weapons, just go on their side there, and they might be killing you, but now they're working with you, and so it will help you out. And so that's kind of the big key with it. And so any way that we can convert those regulatory cells from not wanting to protect to wanting to attack, then that's a big advantage.
So basically, from a pro-tumor to an anti-cancer, because
That's right.
people think, well, when you introduce immunotherapies, the cancer waves a white flag and says, "I give up," but actually, it pushes back.
Yeah, cancer gets really, that's super adaptive. And like, it's so much stuff that you hit it with, and it tries to get around it. And that's why, your only way is to do just a major onslaught of like so many therapies and overwhelm it, so that it doesn't have a chance to adjust, because you leave stuff uncovered. That's why you're never going to get it with 2-3 therapies. This is not enough.
Or sequential.
Yeah.
It's like cancer goes, oh, here comes surgery. Oh shoot, they're throwing me a curveball with chemotherapy. Never saw that one coming. Sequential, and it's like, no, cancer is constantly mutating and adapting.
It always figures out kind of a way, until the only way is that the immune system going against it, because cancer, to survive, needs the help of the immune system, because the immune system is the architect and the constructor of the body, and it controls like where the cells go, what they do, and this was the stuff that we saw in some of the cancers where the immune cells, like particularly when cancer spreads to the bone, the immune cells were going to the bone and prepping the bone, and then the cancer came.
Right.
But those immune cells are normal, right? They're not cancerous, right? But they're working for the cancer. And so the cancer has control of that part of the immune system, which can decide how it wants to build things in your body. And so that's how the cancer can get into other parts and invade it. It needs the immune system to do it. It doesn't do it just by itself. Very rare that cancer can just go lodge in a place and grow. It has to have the help of the immune system.
Yeah, really interesting, again, study. It was looking at 3 treatment arms: cryoablation with ipilimumab. Whoever comes up with the names of these drugs should be tarred and feathered. Just aside, my opinion.
It gets complicated, and as you get more and more, it's just, I know they run out of names.
I think they played Scrabble when they were coming up with the names of these. As you'll get 58 points or something. So 3 treatment arms: cryoablation alone, ipilimumab alone, and then cryoablation with ipilimumab. And they found that, and it was a breast cancer model, but sustained 30 days. The 30-day sustained immune response was only in the combination group.
Yeah.
But it was because they were shifting the Th2 to the Th1, which is what you're talking about, that kind of immune protective regulatory to activating against the tumor, become anti-cancer.
Yeah.
So just really, that's just the evidence to basically back up exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And we touched on this a little bit, but stimulating the immune system at the wrong time, or stirring inflammation, that's not always good.
Right. Yeah. There's inflammation, there's different types of inflammation. And so there are certain situations where the inflammation may be anti-cancer. There's inflammation where the immune system is attacking cancer, or there's inflammation that's pro-cancer. And there's a little bit different. Obviously, I think, somewhat more prostaglandins seem to be more pro-cancer, but yeah, that's definitely, an issue there. And so some patients, you get concerned and say, well, if I take an NSAID, an anti-inflammatory drug, is that going to negatively affect my immune response? Well, it actually turns out it seems to help because that's an inflammation that you don't want that affects versus steroids, which affect inflammation in a different form, and that's negative, and that impacts the immune response and will make the immune cells not want to attack the cancer.
Now, this is a question from me for you, but it's not a question that typically I've heard from patients or yet have. But obviously, clearly, the goal and intent here is to activate the immune system. Yet, in the process of ablating and destroying part of the tumor, if you don't create a word you said earlier, co-stimulatory signals, which we inject in there, you actually can stimulate a tolerogenic response.
That's true.
So this is tolerogenic versus immune activating, but you connected that very early on in this conversation tonight about co-stimulatory signals, which we inject in to go with the immune checkpoints and other immunotherapies.
So it's a problem. That's why sometimes like these immunotherapies, like when you do some of these PD-1s and all stuff, it's out of sequence for that person, that really can negatively affect the immune response, because you're trying to tell the immune system to attack, and then it looks and says, okay, I should, but then it doesn't get the full signals to go through with it. And then the immune system remembers that. And then when you try to say, hey, attack this again, it's like, no, I already saw that and I didn't get the signals to go, so it won't even initiate it, right? So now you made it worse. I mean, now you've got it where you got to work a lot harder to try, and that's a situation you don't want. I mean, you want to try to treat it, and that's what sometimes the patients they don't understand. Like you do one treatment, and you're getting that immune system coming in, and you do a second, and then you're boosting it, and the patients really get a scan, and the cancer is not smaller because this hasn't really had a chance to really affect it, and they're like, oh, well, it's not working, so I'm going to stop. They do that, and it's the worst thing you can do, because you just start a process, and you need to finish it out. And if you don't do that, and then what happens? They wait, and you have to try to convince them, and they delay it, and then we're in a situation where we kind of started it, and now we let it go, and now it's much harder. And the patients I understand where they're coming from on it, because they're thinking from the chemotherapy aspect, but they don't understand from the immune aspect. That's a process that you're going through it, and you're starting it going. You have to push it along, and you can't expect it to be finished then. It's like it's like building a house. You bring the materials out there, and you don't expect the house the next day. You expect that they're going to pour a foundation and put up the studs and stuff like that. That's the process that's going to happen, and so it's the same way with this.
And the final question is, people go, well, why not? Why does just stimulating the immune system, why does it just not attack the tumor? Because some tumors are cold, some tumors are hot. So in some tumor types, we have to actually manipulate a non-immune responsive tumor to become immune responsive.
Sure,
so there's this cold versus hot debate. And of course, that's where this conversation of ivermectin comes in. But there are other therapeutics that we can use that help to take cold tumors hot. And so this can be a part of the strategy we employ as well.
Yeah. And one of the things, like, you get the immune system attacking the cancer, but and maybe it's going good, and the cancer, immune system is really attacking it, but the cancer is still adapting, right? The cancer is still changing. So you may be starting to get a good response, but you got to keep pushing it a lot of times. And the question is, what is the point of, like, when you push it enough that the immune system by itself can do it without you assisting it? Right. And that's different. There are certain cancers, one shot. You do one shot, and boom. And that's what I think, makes it challenging for some of the patients who their cancers are more difficult and they need, multiple treatments. But they like to say, well, that person only needed one. Yeah, but that's a different cancer.
That's right.
Different, it's a different situation. And we know which ones are, we understand which ones are more likely to respond easily and which ones are going to take longer. And occasionally, it's not always just that cancer type, because there's other, things with it. And so you never know. It can be different for different people.
So basically what we've done through in this podcast is go through a series of common questions, maybe misconceptions, and I threw in some extra questions about why we do what we do at the Williams Cancer Institute. There's great intent and purpose, and it's not just a protocol aspect, but it's actually guided by science.
Mm-hmm.
It's guided by experience, of which I don't think anybody has the experience that you have out there. And it's guided with an intended purpose to empower the immune system to do its freaking job, which is to target the tumor, destroy it locally, and then activate to then transfer that to distant, untreated tumors, create a sustained systemic immune response. And you can only get this at the Williams Cancer Institute.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
which unfortunately, right? I mean,
unfortunately.
I mean, like, again, we want other people doing this. We want everybody doing it. We're not trying to keep this to ourselves. But unfortunately, we are the only ones. I mean, there's nobody that does what we do, and I'm sad for that. I mean, I want other people doing this.
And I've gotten to know Jason really well. Of course, we knew each other back in medical school. We've reconnected and got to know him even more. And when he says he's saddened that more doctors don't do this, it's legit.
Yeah.
It's legit.
Yeah, I mean,
and because none of us are hurting for a shortage of cancer patients, unfortunately.
You know, it's not a money issue. You know, I have plenty of stuff going on. I don't need to make money in this. I can do other stuff, and I will. If you know, when we have cancer fully cured, I will do other things. I'll be very happy to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but you know, it's just trying to help people because you know I see the people suffering. You know, I know they're suffering, and I know that there's so many out there that are suffering, and I can't get to them. I can't help them, and you know, this is. I mean, I'm trying to get it out there, and you know, hopefully, I think eventually it will get there. But it's just unfortunately it's too slow. I mean, you know, I mean, all the times I see these famous people dying of cancer.
Yeah.
I could save them. I could have saved them, but they didn't come to me. They didn't know, and you know, they assume that you know that these top cancer centers are their best, and they don't know about our stuff. And so, you know, cancer patients they have to do their research and see. I mean, you know, really look at it. Don't be just blinded by it's a big name center,
right.
And thinking they've got to be the best because they're not.
So where can patients or doctors that may be viewing this or listening to this, where can they find out more information about you and the Williams Cancer Institute?
Yeah, obviously we've got WilliamsCancerInstitute.com, and then you know, in my book. My previous book, you know, the immunotherapy revolution, I think is still good. It's still good.
Oh, it's still very relevant.
You know, and that's will give people helpful tips. And yeah, I mean, if there's doctors out there that want to just so they want to come visit and see, and we help out. We do have some doctors that do that. You know, I mean, some that come in, and there's a few that they're trying. They want to do it. They want to do stuff. I mean, I've got several good interventional people that I work with in the U.S. and they would love to do what we do, but they're stuck. I mean, they do what they can.
Yeah, which is they're stuck in a system that limits what they can do.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why we're down here in Cabo.
Exactly.
You know, if you didn't notice, that's the ocean in the background. So you know, it's not a bad place to go to become well again.
Cabo's my favorite place. I mean, you know, I live here because I love to live here. I mean, you know, people are like thinking like, why would you want to live in Mexico? I mean, it's great here. I mean, I go to the U.S. some, but I prefer to be here.
Yeah. And as always, check out the show notes for this podcast episode, because there you're going to find the evidence that actually guides behind why we do what we do at the Williams Cancer Institute, and honestly guided this discussion. And if you want to go deeper dives, we'll have that information there for you as well. So thank you for joining us on this podcast, and we will see you on the next podcast. And Jason, I hope we get to do many, many more together.
Oh, yeah.
Just like this in this setting,
awesome.
because it's pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right, man. Thanks.